Here's John Shannon, the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, a show 100% hockey. Of course, the most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia. How are you?
I'm not sure I'm strapping, but that's okay.
No, very few are strapping.
No.
Strapping.
Paul Bunyan, like, yes.
Hey, John, what are you expecting out of the Canucks this week?
Well, I actually, it would not surprise me to see them, as lots of people have talked about, move their pick at this point. They need to be better next year. They need to have a lineup that can compete. When you see what's going on in the Pacific Division, teams making themselves better, the Canucks can ill afford to be caught just watching. So if that means move the 15th pick, then that means move the 15th pick. And it's funny. I thought we've seen dribs and drabs of trades in the last 10 days. I think because not everybody's going to be in the same room on Friday. And most of the people were there in Buffalo at Combine, so the discussion started earlier. But it would not surprise me to see a few more trades this week in and around the draft, before the draft actually occurs.
Okay, let me ask you two follow-ups on the flip sides of the coin. What are the chances Canucks fans are disappointed this week because management just doesn't have the assets or isn't willing to part with what's being asked for to land that top two center?
I don't believe the latter. The former might be the one. People may just not think the Canucks have the right assets. I do think there is an appetite to find a number two center. I do think that they would be prepared to move bodies, but you have to find somebody to trade with, and that will become the real challenge right now.
I mean, the prices that we're seeing are very attainable for the Vancouver Canucks.
But look at the players.
That's right. You can't sit here and say, and Chris Kreider was a great player still, but Chris Kreider's not coming to Vancouver, so throw him out. Andrei Burakovsky is not going to help the Vancouver Canucks. Trevor Zegras, in my opinion, would not help the Vancouver Canucks. So are we seeing guys be traded? Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are anywhere beneficial to what Vancouver needs. I mean,
yeah, fair enough.
The free agent signings that we've seen start in dribs and drabs, Ryan Donato, Matt Duchene. Matt Duchene wasn't going anywhere. So we can sit here and pie in the sky and say, well, we'd like to have these 6 free agents, but some things just aren't practical. And you have to understand that.
Okay, flip side of the question. What are the chances the Canucks pull a rabbit out of their hat, land what they need to land this week, and send Canuck Nation off into a happy summer?
Okay, so I'm going to answer the question.
Long pause.
I'm not sure anything will help Canuck fans be happy. Honestly, I say that earnestly because it's a hard fan base to please. You can please some people, you can't please everybody. Do I think they're trying? Sure, they're trying, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It doesn't mean it. And by the way, it doesn't mean it has to happen this week. There could be major surgery on July 1st. There could be major surgery on July 15th. And I don't think that there's anything stopping Patrick Allvin, Jim Rutherford, and that group to, if they feel they can make a trade anytime over the summertime to improve the hockey club, they would.
No, it doesn't. But there is a point where teams, and we've seen this from other markets as well, where the music stops, and guess what? You don't have a chair.
Right.
And right now, the Vancouver Canucks do not have a second line center. And Trevor Zegras would not be the one that I would sign up for sure. But Trevor Zegras is better than nobody. So they better have pretty hard and fast plans on where they want to go here to get the second line center, because between the free agents that are being signed before July 1st and the trades that are happening, I mean, you can't get left with nobody here,
No,
John. And there's
you're right.
finite stock, right?
No, you're right. Which means, but never in his career has Jim Rutherford been shy.
No, that's true.
So here we are on the 23rd of June. Why are we ever suggesting that the Canucks are going to be shy? They're not.
There's 54 years of history that has shell-shocked Canucks fans, Sean.
No, but also
that's why.
That report in the Athletic last week that they're coming around on the idea of Hedl as their second line center, which would mean no upgrade there. So
cannot be.
I'm just wondering if they're looking around and going, wow, it's such a competitive marketplace and we just don't have the assets or are unwilling to part with the assets we do have to make that deal and get better.
The only thing I would suggest, and this is the guys at The Athletic do a magnificent job. I mean, I shudder to think where our business would be without The Athletic now. It's so
fair.
Good. But word games get played between now and July 1st. Word games get played between now and draft day. And if you're in line for a number 2 center, like we all think the Canucks are, you have to be able to play the game to say, well, you know what, we might be happy with Hedl. And, when you do negotiate, sometimes you negotiate publicly with information. And so, and we've seen every manager, we've seen every team do that, even for longer than 54 years, Blake. That happens at this time of year. I think we're going to be surprised, not just with the Canucks. I think we're going to be surprised in the next 10 days of activity for trades between now and Friday, and then what happens on free agent day. I think it's going to be a crazy, crazy time because owners are pressing their managers and their teams to be winners because they see the revenue streams that happen in playoffs. And I think that there's a real belief that there are going to be teams that are over the cap that are going to need to move big players in order to try to stay cap compliant. And, somebody's going to come to the rescue. Now, it may not be the Vancouver Canucks. It may be the Anaheim Ducks that have so much cap space, but there are going to be teams that are going to make a difference. And I think that there's lots of times where Rutherford and Alvin think that they can be in that position.
I've been maintaining that the prices are going to stay low, though, on the trade market. I think that teams right now they are loving the temptation of having a lot of cap space to go shopping, even though it's not a great free agent class. I just think that the teams can't help themselves but want to liquidate or
re-sign your own players still. Or re-sign your own players. One of the things that I think is becoming a learning curve, Blake, is that getting rid of a player and not getting very much back is actually becoming more attractive to teams because they're getting their cap space. They're getting their cap space back.
Yes.
So that they become more flexible. So when you look at guys that are being moved for mid-range draft picks, or there's a third team involved and they're taking some of the cap space. People are saying, well, you didn't give very much for him. No, but look how much more flexible we can be when we need to sign our defenseman or we need to go into free agency on July 1st.
Yep.
What do you think of the fit Zegras and Tocchet?
Well, Rick's been through this before.
Oh, my goodness.
Rick knows how to
got another project.
Trevor Zegras, it's funny. Trevor Zegras' skill is
terrific,
through the roof.
Oh, it's outstanding.
He's a great passer. But I don't know if you remember last Tuesday who won the Stanley Cup. They were a little more physical. They were a little more brazen than most hockey clubs. And if that's the goal, and last I checked, the Flyers are in the Eastern Conference, you're going to have to play through Florida at some point. Trevor Zegras is going to have to toughen up. And maybe that's what Rick Tocchet's message to him is. He's got great skill. But guys, and this is, I don't want to become overly critical, but a lot was made out of Zegras from a marketing perspective by the league, by sponsorship, because of a couple of plays.
Mm-hmm.
And how did he? And there's going to be Ducks fans that are upset today, but how did he help that team win? And the answer is, I'm not sure he did.
Reunited with Jamie Drysdale too. Those two were both in
That's
Anaheim
right.
together.
Well, I'd like to know the conversation today between Zegras and Cutter Gauthier, saying,
Yes.
you know, I got your spot.
I know you do a lot of work in Edmonton. What are you hearing on Evander Kane?
Nothing. I think that two players are dominating the conversation. Evan Bouchard and Connor McDavid.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage that situation? And I mean, at this point, Evander's under contract for another year. So from that perspective, they're not forcing themselves to do anything with him. Whether it becomes in the second buyout window, or they want to move him. But I have not even heard that they're interested in moving him at this point.
Is there any sense that maybe they would trade Evan Bouchard, thinking that he's never going to be more highly regarded than he is right now?
No.
They're going to just try to find the space.
I think they have to find the space. I think that the residue of last year's offer sheets put Evan Bouchard in a tremendously positive position. And it put the Oilers in a really tough spot. If Philip Broberg was still around on the blue line, things might be different. But he's not. And so there's a ton of pressure to make sure that they keep Evan Bouchard in the fold.
What do you think Colorado does with Martin Necas?
That's a good question. Boy, oh boy, you look at that trade, and if Necas does leave or they can't find a way to do it, that was a trade that worked badly for both teams, didn't it? I mean, when you think about it, the Rantanen trade. Now, Carolina got a couple of good draft picks out of Dallas, but Dallas always thinks that they're going to be in the high 20s drafting. So they got Logan Stankoven. But that was a classic trade. You know, those ones that we talked about as kids, they said, you know, that's a trade that helped both teams. Yeah. Not necessarily. Necas and Necas did exactly what Necas has done for the last 5 years. Great start, falls off. Great start, falls off. Had a great start in Colorado, fell off the cliff and contributing. So you do wonder again if it doesn't make any sense that he moves on from there as well at this point.
And what about William Karlsson in Vegas as they try to find some room for Marner?
Yeah, Kelly's got a real challenge if they're going to get Marner for, what would it be, 7 times 13, 7 times 12, if they can afford to tell them that the tax situation is different.
Yeah,
you know, so they're going to have to do a lot more juggling than William Karlsson in order to make it work. Now, Alex Pietrangelo probably will not play this year, so he will go on LTIR. So there's a lot of money that they're saving there.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of money they're saving. So that will help Kelly be a little more flexible. But when you think about the money that they've spent in recent years with Eichel and with Hertl, it's going to be an interesting jigsaw puzzle.
Are Bowen Byram and JJ Paterka Sabres at this point next week?
Well, so my question on that is, and I don't talk to Kevin Adams, and I don't, but my question is, if I'm every other team in the league, I covet JJ Paterka and I covet Bowen Byram. Well, why don't the Sabres? Why aren't the Sabres saying we like these guys?
I think they don't cover Buffalo and the Sabres anymore.
Well,
John.
perhaps, but you know, and I mean, Paterka is supposed to be. I guess the Rangers are hot and heavy after Paterka, but there's a ton of teams after Byram. But if I'm Kevin Adams, I got to find a way to make Buffalo more attractive for them. I really do. You know, and this is what they're trying to do in beefing up their front office with a guy like Jarmo Kekalainen, who's one of the great, in my opinion, one of the great player evaluators in the game. They have to find a way to make it more attractive and make these guys want to stay there. And if I'm the Sabres, those are two great assets. Try to find a way to make them stay.
And again, with these trade prices being what they are, I just don't think you get back what those players are actually in your lineup.
And you do need bodies. You need bodies to play the game. And, in many ways, how close are the Sabres? And I think the Sabres can be a lot closer than people realize. I really do.
Yeah.
They do have some assets. They do have some quality players. If they can get UPL to play better in goal, Owen Power needs to improve his game a little bit more on the blue line as well. But Buffalo's not as bad off as people think they are.
No, I think everybody looked at their roster at the start of last year and thought, okay, they're finally gonna tempt a playoff spot here, and they never did, obviously. But yeah, on paper they look a lot like they should be a lot better than they have been.
Absolutely, and if Norris can stay healthy, which is a big if, they're a pretty good hockey club.
Mm-hmm.
Ricard Raquel and Bryan Rust, the Penguins wingers, are they still in Pittsburgh at the end of this week? And I know you talked to Dubas, so you can't give me the same line that you just gave me on Adams.
And are either worth the price of acquisition? Not that the prices again are that high, but do you like what's left in the tank for both of those players?
I love Bryan Rust.
Okay,
I would have Bryan Rust on my team any day of the week. I think that he's a huge asset. He would be a great help to any team on the West Coast north of the 49th parallel. And we know, listen, and we know the front office knows him very well, right? So Bryan Rust is a hell of a hockey player, and has scored. He's one of those mid-range guys that the Penguins always seem to have in their Stanley Cup runs. And he's just a dying breed in Pittsburgh right now when you consider that Kyle's in the middle of a rebuild. But Bryan Rust, any discussion of Bryan Rust leaving Pittsburgh, if you're a Penguin fan, you have to be disappointed because he's that good a player. You can
33
squeeze a couple of years. You can squeeze a couple of 3 years out of him. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What do you think he's worth on the trade market?
Oh, you know what? I mean, is it cap space again? Who knows? I don't.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Is 15th overall a fair deal for him?
Like, is that too much? Is that too much?
That's
too much.
Too much. Far too much. If you're taking on the contract, that's the other part. You're taking on the contract. You're not giving up a first round pick for him. You're just not. But it's funny. We had Sam Cosentino on our show this morning, and what is the price? We used to be able to say a first round pick was worth about $6 million, $7 million. I don't think we know what the prices are right now.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point, John, because people are washing cap space again. People aren't exactly all that fussy about this draft class, so. No, we could see some real curveballs here.
And I mean, if by 15 the right guy, if there's a team out there that covets a certain guy in that mid-teens, that the Canucks feel that that they can part ways with, something may happen actually during the draft more than anything.
Last year, it became so apparent that Jake DeBrusk, was it last year? Jake DeBrusk signed last year.
Yeah,
it just before he had signed, it just seemed like he was going to be a Vancouver Canuck. And it just sort of feels like one of Raquel or Rust will be a Vancouver Canuck.
A little bit because of the history there.
Yeah.
I could see it.
And the need.
Of course. Lastly, for me, John, is the center trade market, does that flow from a Marco Rossi trade? Like Pajot, Coyle, if one of the Boston guys, Zibanejad, if he's willing to move, do all of those trades await a Marco Rossi deal, or is Rossi and the lack of size a particular centerman with a particular market, and the rest of the center needy teams are maybe looking at those other names?
Oh, I think the pool of centers. I don't think Marco Rossi. I know there's been lots of talk in Vancouver about Rossi. I don't think he dictates very much. I also think that in many scenarios, the reason that Rossi hasn't moved yet is that people are saying that Bill Guerin's just asking too darn much for him, for what he is and what he can be. But I don't think that there's one particular player that is dictating that position, either for trades or when we talk about what's going to go on after July 1st.
Marvelous stuff. You seem busy. We'll let you get to that.
Yeah, I know. Now, what's going to happen tonight? Is this going to be a celebration?
Are you heading down to Charleston to check it out? You should.
Charlotte.
Charloette.
Charleston. I just read Charleston.
No, but I've been
Charlotte.
watching. Carlson and Bain and Mancini.
It's disappointing. Blake made the point late last week. To win it on home ice on a Saturday night is a different kettle of fish than greeting a team from the airport on a Tuesday. You know what I mean? So it would have been great fun. Would have loved it.
But I'll tell you what, it's great to see. It's great to see the Lower Mainland engaged. It really is.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Thank you, sir. Until next week.
Cheers, boys.